Well, it's good to be back on another episode of 12 Man. We've got Joe, who's a massive, massive Arsenal fan from London. Joe, great to have you on the show. How are you doing?
It's great to be here. Yeah, I'm doing very well. And yeah, looking forward to it. As you say, as a massive Arsenal fan, I was delighted to meet you a few days ago. You're a surprisingly nice bloke, all things considered, despite the colours. But yeah, no, delighted to be here.
Great to have you on, Joe. When I met you, you were brilliant as well because you were a top Arsenal fan, but you're also you were very nice to me as a Spurs fan too. We had actually had a few technical issues earlier on there with my laptop, so that's probably why I'm on lucky but different on a phone. Joe, the weekend started off before the Arsenal game with a huge one for Brighton at Old Trafford. Did you see this sort of result coming?
It's easy to say after the game that I did. No, obviously United should always be going into that game as heavy favourites, but Brighton are a huge threat to any team, home or away. This season, last season, they're a massive threat, and they are being taken seriously, I think, now. But no, I didn't see it coming. But I think nowadays, big teams like United need to be aware that the game is changing. It's no longer a big six in the sort of clearly defined way that it used to be. And teams like Brighton, they're a massive threat. So I didn't see it coming, but I'm not overly surprised.
I was a bit like you. I thought United really had a bounce back. I was expecting some sort of response. And in the early part of the game, they did kind of create a few chances. But once Brighton got in front, I mean, the confidence of United went down, and really, Brighton's football took over. When you looked at the two teams, what you could see that Brighton were the team that were the better coached, the better organised. Do you think there massive worrying signs there for Man United that teams like Brighton are coming to Old Trafford full of confidence and playing them off the pitch?
It's a massive worry. I think United aren't playing terrible football at the moment. I do think Ten Hag is a quality manager tactically, and I do think that on their days they have been a lot worse in recent years. But I think they have to act. They don't have the confidence of Man United at Old Trafford. I think Old Trafford should be seen as a fortress for them, and it is humiliating to see things like this happen. So yeah, I think with the quality of the football they're playing, that doesn't seem to be the biggest issue. It's, as you say, Brighton were by far the more confident team, which should never ever be the case for United at Old Trafford. They shouldn't be played off the pitch like that mentally. And yeah, Brighton completely deserved it. I think it is really worrying for United, just in the sort of mental aspect. There's a really, really negative sort of atmosphere at the club at the moment, is it?
I mean, it's 3 to 5 games. But for Arsenal, will be right, Nottingham Forest and Wolves. You know what I mean? Do you think they're massive pressure heading into next?
Oh, sorry, you broke up for the last bit of that. Would you mind repeating the question?
Do you think the next few games after losing the last 3 out of the last 5?
I think I don't think he's under I don't think he's going to lose his job. I think he's got a little while yet, but the pressure is on, obviously off the pitch as well as on the pitch, and the issues from the top will always trickle down. The fact that there have been so many problems off the pitch, it's obviously Glazers, it's things like Sancho, the fact that disputes and arguments between players and manager are becoming public. That should never ever happen. And obviously the controversy with Greenwood and now with Anthony. It's not easy for him. He's got a really tough task as it is, but he's got to right the ship somehow, and it feels like it's totally a mental thing. There's too much drama off the pitch, and it's really hard to put out a team that feels confident in the team they're playing for, proud of the club, when you've got so many issues off the pitch.
I totally agree. I think he's under huge pressure to get results. But as you said, it's always been made much more difficult with the Sancho issue, Greenwood. Now we're hearing about the Anthony issue, and all these problems with the ownership seems to be dropping on the list. But when I looked at the game on Saturday, after the game, I did speak about it at the start, like it's quite easy to say now. But did you not kind of go through the Brighton team and the Man United? Think, you know what? Brighton actually have better players.
Um, Brighton don't have better players. In my opinion, United's squad is one of the best in the league, and it's certainly not better than Brighton's squad. But we're seeing everywhere in world football at the moment that having the best team does not translate to results, and the overall general quality of football in England at the moment means that there are teams like Brighton who are unbelievably slick, and like I say, the mentality, it's all positive. But you'd have thought with a club like Brighton, if they sell a player for over 100 million in the summer transfer window, you would expect that their squad would be considerably weaker going into the start of the next season. But it never happens. For the last 4 years, they've been doing fantastic business without ever really losing form, without ever really dropping their standard, which
It
is
seems to be like, even though they sell their best players, the players they bring in, even though they let Graham Potter go, as Debra comes in, they just seem to get better and better each year.
exactly, which shows that it's not a personnel thing. It shows how far confidence can go and how far a really good club atmosphere can go. And they've
Do you
got a lot
think
of faith.
the structure of Brighton is just like night and day compared to Man United's structure at the moment?
Um, it's a good question. I would say the issues with Man United are being obviously blown up by the press, and it's all a lot of people are talking about. With Brighton, I think because they're lower profile as a club, the press will I think is generally a little bit kinder to them. But from an outside perspective, they're one of the best run clubs in the world. And yeah, United, with the exception of Chelsea, in my opinion, is the most sort of damaged club off the pitch in England at the moment.
No, I totally agree. I think it's very, very difficult to see how they're going to probably sort of a lot of talk about the Glazers, but that's the game 3-1. But I do think they need some sort of from the top.
Oh, sorry, say that again.
I think they need some sort of from the top. It's not just the players. I think they really need to sort of out.
Yeah, I think I got that. So you're talking about sort of how they need sort of stability in
On
the
the
board
party
and
with the ownership, they need an owner that's going to send them in the right direction again, because there
exactly
seems to
that.
be so much negativity with the.
Yeah, that's exactly that. And the Glazers haven't been seen at a United game since the FA Cup final, I think,
Yeah.
and they're really sort of like Rio Ferdinand spoke out a couple of days ago, I think, about how the Glazers don't seem to be even United supporters. They don't support the football at all.
Almost as
And
if vested interest. They only have an invested interest. They don't really
yeah,
care too much on the football side of things.
yeah, which is definitely something which is becoming more and more common in football, because it is obviously a proper cash cow. Like, it's a brilliant investment. But like a football club, that is. But they, yeah, I mean, I don't actually know how much of an impact the ownership of a club has on the players directly, but it must be pretty major. You see from the impact of a club in turmoil in terms of, is it for sale? Is it not for sale? Like, it filters down. It all filters down.
Big time. Now we spoke about the players. You don't think that Brighton have better players than Man United, but do you feel that Brighton have a better manager than Man United? Do you think this Roberto De Zerbi could be almost like the next Pep Guardiola? He seems to be getting rave rewards, and Brighton were playing good football under Graham Potter, but they weren't kind of doing the stuff they're doing now when they're going to big games. they're beating all these big teams. I mean, I seen the stat last night. They took 23 points off the top 6 last season, more than any other team. That's a pretty incredible stat.
It's wild. It's wild. They're playing fantastic football, and it's not just that they're getting results. They are actually their stats for this season, or since De Zerbi took over. I saw they're top of the Premier League for shots and shots on target. I think, which is insane, and it goes to show they're not.
Look about these results. They're winning games deservedly.
Yeah, soundly beating teams. And of course, it comes down to the manager. I think it is too soon to say, obviously, if comparing De Zerbi with Guardiola is a tricky one. But you have to put it down to the manager in this scenario. There is no individual, there's no player carrying Brighton. Ferguson being out or was he on the bench? But Ferguson not. Yeah, the fact that he wasn't available doesn't seem to knock Brighton at all. It's just the manager, one way or another. It's working, and I think, long may it continue. The fact that they have been able to weather so many changes in personnel whilst keeping the same quality, I think it is a really interesting one. It's a totally different issue, but you wonder if it would ever be possible for Brighton to shift from being a team which is confidently staying in the Premier League and doing excellent business to a team which is actually challenging for titles. And I don't know. I genuinely don't know how that happens, how that shift happens.
Because every time everyone kind of thinks that once they sell players or managers move on, that Brighton are going to fall off, but they just don't seem to be falling off. They seem to be getting stronger.
Yeah.
So it is a tricky way up, but I do think that this De Zerbi is a big factor in it. I don't think they would be able to replace him. I know people said they couldn't replace Potter, but I think that De Zerbi is the real deal.
Yeah, and I think that will be a massively pivotal moment, whether they decide that De Zerbi is important enough not to take the massive fee that they will inevitably get offered by a massive club. If they decide on him that he's important enough to keep in terms of the football, then it will be a statement to show that they are trying to challenge for Champions League spots, which hasn't really been genuinely in the question so far, in spite of how well they've been playing. I think it would be a massive thing if they retained him.
Last but on Man United, they're playing Bayern Munich tomorrow night. How do you see that game going?
Yeah.
Bayern Munich, everyone's talking about the cause of Harry Kane. Can you see them beat Man United again?
I think it's easily the most likely result. I think you can't underestimate big teams, and they obviously do have they've got players who can really turn up, but you've got Bayern as huge favourites for that. The dominance in Germany is completely it's off the charts. They're on their 11th Bundesliga. They've solved their striker issue. It should be Bayern's for the taking. I do think United could and should still get through that group, but at the moment they aren't really a match for Bayern.
Yeah, I agree. I think Bayern Munich will win pretty comfortably. Joe, let's talk about Arsenal. There was a big question mark about that Goodison Park record. They went to Everton. I think they lost 4 of their last 5 games there. You said to me you thought it was going to be a tricky game, and in the end they won by 1-0. But it was a pretty dominant performance despite only winning by 1-0.
Yeah. I think I do think we are playing better football than the results suggest. But I still don't think it's quite good enough. I'm really pleased to get 3 points there. I think that's the most important thing.
But the scorelines are flattering your opposition, because he's only beat Nottingham Forest 2-1, Crystal Palace 1-0, Everton 1-0, United 10. But them 4 games, they pretty much dominated for large spells. So do you think that in the end, a lot of these ones have been comfortable?
I actually don't think we deserve resounding scorelines for most of the games. I think we still lack. There isn't the same certainty when City plays. There's just sort of an inevitability which I don't think we've achieved yet, and I think the scorelines maybe flatter the opponents a bit, but I'm not going to sit here and pretend that we deserve to be thumping teams, because we don't. And it took us a while last season as well. I remember we were kind of just sort of scraping. We were playing well, but scraping results until we played, I think it was Forest. And that was the first time in a few years that we'd really, really soundly beaten a team in the Premier League. And you see teams, City's are doing it already, Spurs doing it already, like exciting, lots of goals, beating teams by huge margins. It does make a difference for the mentality if you can confidently win games. But
do you think that that's maybe down to what happened last year when these were 2-0 up in a few games and he's lost the lead? Do you think he's just maybe trying to control games that wee bit more, and therefore he's not committing as many players forward, and he just wants overall control and just they see out games?
yeah, I think that was definitely the case last season. This year we're definitely trying to. I think the differences in the sort of positions, a shift towards a bit more freedom in positions like fullbacks, a team that's starting to look a little bit more like the game plans that Guardiola goes for. I think the idea there is that you dominate possession. You've got the ball for 70-80% of the time, and even if you win a game by 1 goal or 2 goals, you still come out of it feeling like it was never going to go any other way. Yeah, but yeah, I don't know. I'm not comfortable with how it is at the moment. I think we need to start looking a little bit more confident, I think.
I mean, a lot of talk about Arteta. He's talking about like playing 25, 30 different formations in one game. He's talking about maybe subbing goalkeepers in game. You think is he just trying to be, because he's tired with that brush of, or two, he's trying to be different and clever?
He's, in my opinion, it's a little bit too much too soon. I do think it's the right direction, but at the start of the season when we were starting with a back four with Thomas Partey at right back, for me that we're not there yet. And I also don't think Thomas Partey was the right player for that job. But I'm very conflicted on it, because I do think we should be moving in that direction. And it's brilliant that Arteta has had the experience of working with Guardiola, who I think almost indisputably is the best manager in the world. And if we can get close to the football that City play, great. But it feels a little bit too much too soon. He's very ambitious, and it makes me nervous. It doesn't make me completely excited.
Well,
It's just
that was my next question, because we've seen Pep do it quite a lot. He changes every season. We've seen John Stones play at right back when he's a centre back. We've seen Akanji play at full back. And Arteta's trying to go down the same kind of route with different players. Do you think that this will benefit Arsenal long term, or do you think that they put them under so much pressure that it could cause like an unbalance?
I think it's a different story with different strategies. As you say, I think it's been really interesting. The signing of David Raya is a really interesting one. I think there's been some major goalkeepers. I think Peter Schmeichel said that goalkeeper is the one position on the pitch where you don't want selection pressure. And I can't help but agree. And it's those sorts of things where I think that creates an unbalance. But other things, if you've got a player, if you can turn 2 or 3 of your players who formerly just had one position, if you can get Ben White, Zinchenko, sort of these sorts of players who can play in defence or midfield or kind of both at once, if you can do that without sort of jeopardising results, it's a massive plus. You've got suddenly you no longer have to play a 4-3-3. You can effectively play a 5-5-2 three. Like, you've got players who are, when you're defending, they're in the back line. When you're in midfield, they're there. And someone like Zinchenko is perfect for that. So I think on the whole, if you can do it without jeopardising results, it's a massive it's a massive benefit.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of talk this season about Arsenal, do they have the squad to compete with Premier League and Champions League? Because if you look around Europe, I don't think the European teams are as strong as they used to be. I think Arsenal have doing well in the Champions League, but do you think that could be a distraction to the Premier League as well?
Yeah, I think there's always a risk. And obviously last year we were in the Europa League, but there was no question that the Premier League was the priority. I think that should be the case again this year. And I think we should just enjoy playing Champions League football without any expectation, because I've seen the odds that Arsenal, I think third or fourth in, I don't know, sort of like the odds for who's likely to win it. I don't think we should let that get to sort of even it shouldn't be in the thought process. Playing on Tuesday nights is something which Arsenal should be doing, and it's brilliant that we're back there. We need to stay at this level. First of all, it's stability, and I think managing both at the same time is really tricky. I like our squad depth. I think seeing a bit more of players like Vieira, I think Smith Rowe getting reintegrated would be a massive thing. We have the squad depth, and I think we can manage both, but I don't think our expectations should be winning Premier League and Champions League. We're not there yet.
Okay. I mean, before we come on to talk about Spurs, Joe, that sounds like quite an atmosphere you're on over there. You're in Croatia. It sounds
I
absolutely
am.
Well, tell us all about it.
I'm sorry about that. Yeah, I've got I'm actually on a boat. This is a tiny little cabin, but I've got eight half-pissed sort of uni students outside. So yeah, there's a little bit coming through the walls.
Brilliant. It sounds class. Here, as you know, I was at the game on Saturday.
Yeah.
Spurs made Premier League history with the latest. I mean, I was at the game. Didn't think it was going to happen. In the end, it did. Did that result in the end surprise you? Obviously Spurs were expected to win, but when you see 1-0 in the 98th minute, were you shocked that Spurs come back and won the game 2-1? Because their Spurs are labelled as a flaky team. A team that when it gets tough, they can't come back. So does that kind of worry you a wee bit that Spurs were able to score them 2 goals later on, and the atmosphere around Spurs the minute's quite good?
Yeah, you're dead right. It's brand new. They've not played like this since I can remember, and yeah, it does worry me. I think the Spurs will compete this year, and in terms of my view on that as an Arsenal fan, I obviously don't want the best for Spurs, but I do think Spurs they risk dropping into proper mid-table mediocrity. I think they've been the most inconsistent or I guess it's the lowest performing of the big six clubs for a number of years now. I think it is a good thing. I love the rivalry, and I think it is a good thing to see Spurs getting back to just sort of playing with a bit more freedom. I think it has a lot to do with the fact that Kane's gone. I think the manager is excellent. It's a great appointment, and it looked really rough when it just seemed like sort of Nagelsmann rejected Spurs, and it just seemed like no one really wanted to be there, and it was just a negative atmosphere. Postecoglou seems to be, he's.
Are you surprised he sort of got everyone on the same page so quickly?
Yeah. Obviously, I think it still remains to be seen whether he can make it last. But now you've got a good team. I believe you've got a good team. You've got good players, and I think Harry Kane has the capacity to kind of. You can continue to be okay in the Premier League with Harry Kane up front, because he will inevitably score 20-odd goals a season. But it definitely holds back players who I've seen it at all in lots of different clubs. When a major player leaves, you do see other players come into their own, and I think
Yeah,
that has happened. Seeing Spurs come back, it blew my mind. I obviously wasn't happy to see it, but it's yeah, I mean it's a totally new Spurs.
yeah. And it'll be seen. It remains to be seen how if they can continue, as you said. I mean, there was a lot of talk around time wasted in the game. Sheffield United. I mean, they were constantly running down the clock. Obviously we've seen the outburst from their manager after the game, but
Yeah,
we've seen Sheffield United concede 3 late goals this season. I mean, they conceded in the last month away to Forest and lost the game 2-1. They conceded against Man City, and in the end lost the game 2-1. And again for the third time conceded late in the game lost. So do you think it's all this time wasting that's costing Sheffield United in the end?
I think that is it. Yes, and the new rules are going to mean that there's a period of time where clubs like Sheffield need to sort of change the game plan a bit, because I think, not to disrespect clubs like Sheffield, but when you're playing against the biggest teams, that is always a major part of the strategy. If you can nick a goal, if you're 1-0 up away from home against Spurs, that is a major part of it. I've been to see a lot of games at the Emirates where I was livid. I was so angry to see that, like, we'd be 1-0 down against Wolves, for example, and the keeper's taking 30 seconds to take a goal kick, knocking his boots off on the post. It is what teams like that do, and it's very often the way they get results. But I think it's a good thing to see the amount of added time. It does make it more exciting, and it's, yeah, time wasting is a form of cheating which should be cracked down on, I think.
Yeah, I mean, you were saying there you think it's more entertaining. Like we've seen 12 minutes out of run that Spurs game. Do you think it's like better for the fans that that there's more like goals? We've seen more like goals than ever before. But it seems to be that when teams are on the wrong side of it, managers are getting very frustrated. So for Sheffield United, when they see 12 minutes, 12 minutes is a long time to try and hold out a 1-0 lead.
Yeah,
Especially
yeah,
when you can hold them out for so long. And I mean, there was 14 yellow cards in the game, so a lot of their players had already been booked for time. I think the keeper was on his last warning. So, as you think that it's a balance between the fans are loving it, but the actual players and the management of the teams are very frustrated.
yeah, definitely. But you have to adapt. You have to. No, I think it's a massive mental thing, because if you're being, if you're really under the cosh, you're defending, you're just parking the bus, then mentally you're working towards that 90-minute mark. Um, and if you reach 90 minutes and then you've got what is effectively another tenth of the game, more than another tenth of the game left, that's in your head. That's the hardest time to motivate yourself for. But you have to adapt, and if that's going to be the rules, I think as long as there's clarity from the referees as to effectively where that time comes from, then I think the frustration from the managers, it's equivalent to the frustration of the fact that you can't pick the ball up with your hands and kick it and throw it in the goal. Like, that's how it is, and I don't think it's a ridiculous rule.
Yeah. Now, when I finish off, you says that you think Spurs could have a good season, but for me, I thought the three teams this year were Man City, Arsenal, and possibly Liverpool because they've got that pedigree. But do you think
Yeah.
Spurs can throw their hat into the mix, or do you feel that that's a bridge too far? And they're very much about getting back into Europe. Just
I think there's no reason why Spurs shouldn't compete. Um, it will all be a mentality thing, and obviously a fitness thing. I think.
I think the fact that they aren't playing in Europe gives them a bit of an advantage that they can sort of only have to focus on one game a week. And statistically, we playing less games, you usually get less injuries. I think Spurs don't have the squad depth, but if they can keep their best 11 players fit, then it gives them half a chance.
Definitely. But I think, as it happened with Arsenal last season, you can't win a title. You can't compete against teams like City if you just have an 11. And I think, yeah, it takes to win titles, you need players like your sort of John Stones, Rodri, like the kind of players that you maybe don't you don't see like loads of in the game. I guess Rodri is an exception, but players who just are so reliable. That's
I mean, if
how.
you look at it, the biggest example you could probably give is Gundogan over the last few seasons.
Yeah,
Just
yeah,
turns it up
exactly that.
at the back end of the season.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's when you've got players who can play in multiple different positions, don't have to start every game, but whenever they come on, whenever they play, you know that you can rely on quality. And that was Arsenal's issue last year, that we just had 11 players. I think Spurs could challenge for top four. And yeah, I think it will just depend on whether they have a winner's mentality, because I think that was a major problem with Arsenal last year as well. That it's been such a long time since they've really been in the discussion for, top four. Well, no, that's not true. That's not true. I mean, obviously, the Champions League last year, but
I think the last 4 years it's been a massive struggle.
yeah, definitely. And yeah, if you can maintain this confidence, I don't see why not.
Yeah, I mean, some other results over the weekend. We've seen Liverpool won again.
Yeah.
Again they were 1-0 down, come back and won 3-1. Do you think are Liverpool, a massive threat to Man City and Arsenal?
I think it hinges on with Luis Diaz back. I think their attack already looks very different. I think Salah. I think as long it means that there's a little bit less pressure on Salah. I think if Darwin Nunez starts actually hitting the target, then it's going to be. Yeah, I think they are a team to worry about. They've got attacking options. Their midfield looks surprisingly okay. I thought at the start of the season it was going to be absolute chaos.
Shablazley looks like a real great find.
He really does. And McAllister, obviously, I wasn't sure about the signing. I think when I spoke to people, Liverpool fans and non-Liverpool fans alike, they all seemed pretty positive on the McAllister signing. They thought it was a good idea. I wasn't so sure, and I think it seems to be working out for them, which I think that was a major reason why they fell off after 2 seasons ago, was that City signed Haaland, Liverpool signed Nunez. I know it's not a direct like for like, obviously, but things would have been very different for Liverpool if Nunez had hit the ground running, as Haaland did. And I think it took him a couple of seasons at Benfica. It might take him a couple of seasons in the Premier League, but I do think he's a quality player.
Chelsea drew 0-0 with Bournemouth. Chelsea at the moment can't score goals, can't win games. I mean, a lot of people thought that it would be different this year under Pochettino. They'd signed players that our teams wanted, like Caicedo, Lavia. It's been a bit unfortunate with Cookie getting injured, but I mean, it just seems like more of the same from last season with Chelsea, and they've spent even more money. What's happening there?
Yeah, they are. It's a graveyard for good players. It's such a shame. Like there are players like someone like Nkunku, someone like Caicedo, Mudryk as well. They're players that, in general, I am really pleased to see in the Premier League. But I just think it is a terrible place to play at the moment. I can't even put my finger on why. I think a team like PSG kind of paved the way for that, showing that you can't buy it. You need some sort of club ethos. You need it to mean something, rather than just someone playing for a wage.
I know what you mean, because when Arsenal run for Mudryk, I think if Arsenal goes under the Arsenal team, Mudryk becomes it will be different because he's coming under a settled team. With a manager that's been there a few seasons. Mudryk's trying to integrate into a new league with a whole bunch of new players. With a manager that's not being there and now being sacked, a new manager done, a whole lot of new players come on again. It's not the easiest place for a player to start playing football, is it, in the Premier League?
It is really tricky, and I do feel for him. I think he's talked about a lot as one of the biggest flops, but that's when you sign for that much money, people won't give you time. You are expected to start performing, start scoring goals as soon as you arrive. And I think I feel for him because I think that's a really hard pressure for anyone to put up with, any player. I think Pepe suffered with it as well at Arsenal, that huge transfer fee. It's more often really negative than it is positive. But at the same time, I find it hard to sort of, I feel bad for him on a personal level, but on a professional level, he's not been good enough.
Yeah.
And I think he's definitely digging himself deeper and deeper into this hole of sort of, the longer you fail to score a goal, the harder it becomes. And yeah, I hope he doesn't just completely sort of fall apart. He's got.
Where do you see Chelsea being this season? A lot of people fancied them to make a go for Europe. There was Chelsea fans saying top four. With the minute they can't buy a goal, never mind buy a one. Do you think it's going to be very similar to last season? And if it is similar to last season, will Pochettino get more time than Potter, or will he suffer the same fate?
I think. Oh, I mean, every time I've tried to make a prediction about Chelsea, they've exceeded my expectations with how poorly they've played, how badly they've invested. So I find it. For me, it seems like the most likely outcome that they'll continue to. I think they'll get slightly better. And yeah, if Nkunku comes back, and if they start to have a slightly more regular team, I think it will get better. The worst thing in the world that they could do, in my opinion, is sack Poch. He needs, I think, in my opinion, whatever happens, he deserves at least until the middle of next season. I think that with managers generally.
I think the issue is, well, there's two ways to look at it. If results become untenable, then usually the manager does suffer. But the problem is that if they've had the same problem with Pochettino, they have with Potter, what would make another managerial change? What would it change? Because you're back in the same situation.
It would achieve nothing. I completely agree. It would achieve nothing.
But unfortunately, when results are poor, fans don't accept it. And I don't know what way they go with this, because if Stamford Bridge becomes like a cauldron for Pochettino, it's not easy for him with that Spurs connection. Some fans don't want him because of that. So they could turn very, very quickly. It's a really difficult one to gauge, isn't it?
It is really hard, and I think I find it really interesting to look at how pressure from fans affects decisions sort of in the club, sort of on the board. I think generally, regardless of that, what Chelsea have lacked, they haven't lacked money, obviously. They haven't lacked the reputation to get big managers and get big players to come. What they've lacked is stability. And you've got to give them a chance. Like someone like Klopp at Liverpool, had he been at Chelsea, I think he'd be gone. But Liverpool is much more of a legacy club. They recognise that he is one of the best managers in the world still. He's been there, he's established, and he's achieved things before. And I think that he stands just as good a chance as any at coming back and challenging for the Premier League again. He's not done. And it's just like with Poch, they've got one of the best managers in the world. If you sack him, you're just creating more problems for yourself.
Here, look, I know it's a big week for Arsenal being back in the Champions League. You play PSV tomorrow night. How do you see that game going? I know you're probably looking at Sunday as well, but you think in a way it's the being back in the Champions League is a nice distraction from Sunday, because if this had been just like maybe 5 or 6 years ago, this may have been a game you may have slipped up on because you have one on Sunday, but because you're back in the Champions League, the atmosphere at the Emirates tomorrow night is going to be electric. And the fans are really excited to be back in the Champions League. So, do you think Arsenal will put on a show tomorrow night?
I really hope so. I think the fans deserve it. I really hope. For me, I'm not going. I see the Champions League, as I said before, as something which I'm just really excited for. It's such a great competition, and it's so nice to be a part of it. And I think we obviously aren't there for the sort of taking part medal. We do want to make sort of
Well, I mean,
quarters, semis.
Will top that group.
Yeah, we are. We really should. We've the draws worked out very well for us. I think I just hope we enjoy it. I hope we don't feel too much pressure, because it's what we've worked for. It was never in my head that we would challenge for the title last season. All it was Champions League, and we've got it. So we have to enjoy it.
Yeah. We spoke about United. We think they could struggle against Bayern Munich. Man City have a very favourable group. Newcastle obviously have a very tough group. But who do you see as the teams that are going to be competing for the Champions League at the end of the season? Is there anyone in your head you think's the team to beat? And where do you think Arsenal could get they potentially?
I think the team to beat has to be Real. They're stronger than they were last season. Bellingham seems to be. Everything he touches turns to gold. So yeah, the team to beat has to be Real. I think I would not be surprised to see Newcastle do very well in that group. I think they'll get through that group. In terms of the English teams, I'd obviously love to say that Arsenal will make semis. I think we definitely have the capacity to. Over 2 legs, I think we are consistent enough for that now. I believe that, and that's been the issue for a long time. But yeah, it's got to be City. I think a City Real final is easily the most likely outcome.
Interesting. And before we go, we're going to have a quick look at the Northampton Derby for the weekend. We're going to be back on Thursday, obviously in our show. It's going to be centered around the Northampton Derby because we have Joe here, big Arsenal fan. I think when this game came out at the start of the season, everyone was thinking, you know what, Arsenal at home against Spurs, they could pick Spurs apart because they're going to be going through a managerial change. They're not going to be set, but both teams come on the same amount of points. Spurs have scored a lot of goals. We haven't got a great record at Arsenal, but are you any way considering the game on Sunday?
100%. A derby to derby. I've been to loads and loads. I've been to maybe 8 North London derbies, and it's never easy. It will never be easy. I think in terms of the entertainment, it is one of the games that I look forward to most in the season. And there is obviously the perspective that you definitely look better coming into it than you have on any occasion that we've met in the past, probably.
I mean, over the last
5 years,
games have had a pattern of, even the games that Spurs have won at the Spurs Stadium, it's been Arsenal dominant possession and Spurs kind of had an Arsenal counter-attack. Do you foresee a very different game on Sunday? Because we've heard Ange say he won't change his tactics for anybody. He'll play the way he wants to. So do you think we're going to be in for a very open and exciting game on Sunday?
I expect goals. I still think Arsenal will dominate the ball. I think we'll still dictate, but you've looked at times over the last couple of seasons. You've looked really sort of blunt and uncreative in sort of going forward, and that's totally different now. I think we've got a lot more to worry about. I do think you will still be playing mostly on the counter, but I think we've got a lot more to worry about than we have in the past.
Go on, before we go, give me a score prediction for Sunday.
I would go 3-2. I think Arsenal win at 3-2.
You know what? I would be absolutely delighted if we can get a draw, because we have a terrible record away at Arsenal. And I think if we could go there and get a draw, and one of them draws where it's not like we've looked to draw and we've been under, go there and compete. And if we were being off, that would be a massive burger. But it'll be interesting to see. Joe, thank you very much for coming on. You're both holiday in Croatia, and we'll get you on again when you're back from London.
Yeah, that'd be lovely. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. Thanks a lot for having me on.
Joe, thanks very much. Enjoy the rest of your holiday.
Thank you. See you later.